Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give show, episode number 23. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today we've got Sandra D'Souza from Curate Bee. Sandra had an interesting opening to small business. Actually, her father ran a small business in Canberra and unfortunately it wasn't successful and he actually lost the business. And Sandra's parents separated and it was actually quite a scary start to a small business. And because of that, she actually took a very stable role as an accountant in Canberra. And she sort of worked her way through that. And then at some point, she decided that actually working for the person wasn't the right thing and she wanted to do something herself. And she also had a bit of a health scare, which really changed the way that she looked at her own life. And she then developed her own agency, which she runs now, and it's very successful, and she's actually taking it global. And she has a great understanding of numbers from both her father's experience early on and also her being an accountant, but she's also got a great way of running an agency. So she's very open in her interview, and I know you're going to get a lot of value from it. So the Build, Live, Give community continues to grow. You can find out more at buildlivegive.com. You can also check out our free Facebook group. It's a closed group. You can check it out at Build, Live, Give. And also, please subscribe to the podcast. If you like this episode with Sandra or others, please subscribe. The more subscribers, the bigger we can build this fantastic community. And also leave those 5-star reviews. We've had quite a few of late, but we still love to get more. So please leave those 5-star reviews. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Sandra. But before we dive into today's show, leaving corporate to run your own business can be extremely hard and lonely. You start off in a euphoric state, and at some point you look at your cash flow and start to doubt your abilities. What you learn in corporate doesn't always translate, and you are bombarded every day with new challenges. Learning something yourself is okay, but it can be both timely and costly. Friends and family want to help, but they don't have the specific experiences you need. This is why we created the Build, Live, Give community, a free community with hundreds of people just like you, answering questions and sharing real experiences, and definitely no spam. This, coupled with weekly interviews on hot topics, will help you expedite success. Search for the Build, Live, Give group in Facebook and answer the 3 questions to gain access. Anyway, enough from me. Now it's time to hand you over to one of the BLG members to hear their wonderful journey. So we're going to get to know a lot about you today, Sandra. But what I'd love you to do is just start with a bit of backstory.
Well, thanks, Paul. Lovely to be here, and I'm really have been looking forward to being part of your podcast. My backstory. Well, I actually started my life as an accountant. We're back in Canberra, and I came from a background or family background of entrepreneurs or small business owners, and which went really, really badly. My dad got bankrupt and then my parents split. So, and being in Canberra, I was very much either the choice was being in public service or doing your own thing. And I moved to Sydney after uni and decided I just want to be an accountant and be a job. Just do a job, get paid regularly, not have any of that. And after 10 years of doing that, I don't know, I guess I realized that I was getting very good at it. It wasn't really exciting. It's the same old. And I wondered about the entrepreneurial side of things and wondered if something that I should pursue. And it wasn't until I did my MBA, there was a couple of opportunities. One was I did a course, and I don't think you can really do a course about entrepreneurial and kind of start a venture in golf. And the second thing was that I worked with a couple of ex-McKinsey consultants on pharmaceutical products and learned how they've got about and starting their venture. So I did that. I did the golf thing on the side while I was working for Telstra. It was same thing. It was same corporate stress and commitment that at that time in life, I was in my early 30s, and I thought, well, I wasn't seeing anybody. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a mortgage at the time. So I thought, now's the time to do it. And I can always come back to work. And so I did do that, made a lot of mistakes, lost a lot of money. And 5 years later, I went back to work. And I went back to work was because I did meet my husband, my current husband now, and got wedding costs and things like that, and decided that I really need the funds. So I had my ups and downs, but ultimately, I think being an entrepreneur is my true calling, and I tried to defy it, which didn't work. And so here I am. After that sort of like journey, I've decided to start my own business in 2012, had my first client, and I'm still doing well out of it. And I think that's because I've learned so many mistakes in the past, and all those experiences have helped me to get me to the point of where I am now.
Brilliant. Well, that's a wonderful journey. It's taken many twists and turns, but just to sort of probe a little more into your personal life outside of work, what's something that your friends or family would know about you that listeners wouldn't?
My friends and family, they know that. I mean, it was really funny because I'm going a bit of a segue here. Is that they know that I'm an excellent gourmet cook, and I find that cooking is the same approach as business, which a lot of probably the listeners won't know. And through cooking, even though it's a recipe, I deviate, I pivot, I change, and then the end result changes each time. But then I learn from that. I talk about that. I use my family members as the guinea pigs. I call them, they're my guinea pigs, which is really me, how I test the market.
Yes.
And get them to survey the results, see what works, and then I perfect it. Not everybody gets to taste my cooking because I have had some disasters, but I find it quite relaxing for me. But funny enough, that's how I apply to business when it comes to, testing and measuring marketing campaigns, business models, anything really.
Great. And is there any particular style that you love to cook?
Well, I would, up until last weekend, I would have said very much the French and Italian style, and I make a really good leg of lamb to lamb roast. However, I decided to embrace my heritage, and I did my first Indian cooking over the weekend, and it was surprisingly, I was very good at it, and maybe it's a genetic thing.
Yeah.
And it was surprisingly easy for me, and in terms of technique wise, and it was incredibly delicious. So I might actually start exploring this path and actually ask my mother a lot more questions about certain techniques. So yeah.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. And look, I know it must have been quite painful watching what happened with your dad and his business. Other than that, was there anything else sort of holding you back when you first went out into the venture in 2012?
I think financial fear is always a concern, and the appearance of success. So what I didn't realize when I left my job was when you go out and introduce yourself, a corporate title really it's part of your identity, and you think that that's really important, and it just shows how important you are. But when you start up your own business, and I have to say, I started at a time when it wasn't really trendy to call yourself, that you're running a startup. It was like, oh, I'm a CEO of one. And it wasn't really that important. People look at you thinking, oh, you're just a small business owner. And maybe they probably don't look at me that way, but that's how I felt. I felt that I'd lost a lot of myself and my identity. And it was a very good way for me to learn a lot about myself. But certainly no one tells you that when you've worked in a very senior role and have gotten so used to being important, that when you step out, that loss of importance, as well as your financial fear, comes, hitting you hard in the early days.
Yeah, look, that's so true. And It's funny, sort of reflecting back for me, because I was very similar to you, quite senior, walk into a room and just didn't know what to say I did because I didn't know. So how could I expect someone else? And actually what it meant is that I listened to people a lot more what they did. I actually realised that I used to talk about myself way too much. I used to do one or the other. I wouldn't talk at all because, everyone knows someone at Coca-Cola, so I didn't want to go down that path.
Yeah.
So I just wouldn't say who I worked for, or I'd sort of, say this is who I work for and talk a bit about the company. But I didn't, I think actually finding out what other people do and realising that that's the real power of a small business, I think was a real defining moment for me. What was sort of your experience with that?
That's absolutely true. I've learned to be more of a human. And look, it doesn't mean that I wasn't a human before, but I do realize that the corporate culture do produce you to become an identity that I had to be. I had to behave in a certain way and be less personable, I thought. And to say that, I don't think I'm kind of like, it's good to see that not the corporate culture is evolving since then, and you don't have to be that way. It's all about dealing with people. But and I had to learn how to be a person, how to talk to people, how to learn from them, show interest, be interested. And what I do like, one of the many good things about being your own boss is you get to choose who you want to hang out with. You don't have to talk to people you don't like.
Yeah, that's so powerful, and a good reminder for people that are having difficulties or listeners having difficulties with clients that you can actually make that choice. It's unlike corporate. And what about help? So obviously you made a lot of mistakes prior to 2012, learnt from those, but what sort of help did you get to be more successful post 2012?
I was certainly realizing that I need to talk to people more and just pick the brains of people who have done a good job. Maybe it was the younger days where I thought I knew everything and I actually knew nothing, and thought I could do it all myself. But if I call my rebirth with Curate Bee, is that I learned to lean a lot more on others, and even though I may be able to do everything myself, is actually try. I started hiring an employee as soon as it was financially possible, my first employee, and then it just grew from there, and it just brought in more income. And it made me realize that the more I let go, the faster I can grow the business.
Yeah, look, that's a great point. And someone once said to me that we sort of went through all the things that could stop the business growing, and I didn't get to the answer he wanted, and the answer he wanted was you. Actually, you're the number one reason why your business won't grow, you getting in the way of it. So I think that's so powerful a message for our BLG listeners is around letting go. So that's brilliant. So that's a great backstory. What I'd love to do now is just move forward to today. So I know you've got a very successful agency, Curate Bee. Just when you walk into a room, that networking room now, what do you say to people when people ask you, what do you do for a living?
Well, I say that we are a digital marketing agency that's very good at working with small to medium-sized business. We want to be the go-to brand, and we're all about creating an awesome online presence for our clients. If you permit me to explain a little bit further, because I know
sure.
you're supposed to do only 15 seconds, but the Google did a study a couple of years ago that people research everything that they buy online first. And unless you have 7 hours and 11 touch points over 4 locations, it's very hard to try and get customers through your door. And by the time they come to your door, if they've done enough research, they're pretty much a cauliflower.
We know what you mean.
I know, politely. Jeez, I don't know what's going on with me today. So that's what we try and help our clients in all aspects of digital marketing, and that is, making sure they have their online presence out there, because there's nothing worse is when a customer does the research and what you say and what you represent, the value and the essence of you, if it's not there and it's not the same as the reality, it's not a good thing, and it starts the whole buying process in the wrong way. So we're very big on making sure that you have an authentic presence online.
Great. And, a question that we often get asked in the club, we've got the Tracks End Club members in there, ask about the weight between a website, say a LinkedIn profile, and maybe a Facebook group or Facebook profile. Have you seen any changes in the weight that research plays with those sort of three different mediums?
Absolutely. I think before you would look at a website and you don't really know how active that website are and whether, and there's also the trust thing, that it's more important to feel that what you're researching, that the company or the product is legit. So social media has introduced, I guess, a way of getting peer reviews, and also a way for the brand to show that if they have more recent updates, then that the business is still going and it's still valid, and then if they're responsive, that you're purchasing from a legit business. And if you don't see that, then what buyers tend to think is like, oh, okay, this business is not available anymore, or this seems something that's quite historical. Then they move on and find the next competitor. So social media has introduced, I guess, a now, what do you call, essence. So that the business, it will validate whether the business is available now.
Yeah, that's great advice. And look, I know for me personally, I've probably changed my LinkedIn profile and the summary probably every month. I sort of, as I talk to clients and get more feedback, I'm constantly doing that. Whereas my website, I tend not to do that as often.
Exactly. And that's because it's easy to do it on social media and not so easy to update a website. I mean, the blogs make it much easier, like to show some content, but it doesn't move as fast as your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook or your Twitter account. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that they stay up to date.
Great. And how do you make revenue with the agency?
So I'm very big. Having been an accountant and been on the other side, I know what are the challenges for businesses, whether it's corporate or small business. And so it means a lot to me to make sure it's a fixed price. Whatever we offer, it's got to be a fixed price. And that's not easy when it comes to services. So what I've essentially done is build items of services that are relevant for a business to market themselves. And it's like an a la carte. They pick and choose what they want. We also have packages, and the scope is all very much determined, which we know works for the business, and they know it's a fixed price so that there's no nasty surprises at the end. So it ranges from, building a website. It could be digital advertising through Google, Bing, Yahoo, or Facebook. It could be blog writing, it could be newsletter, or even, as well as social media management. So like I told you about the whole different touch points, we do pretty much all of them, but some clients are already very good at a few of them, and so they don't need the whole suite of services. And through this, I guess, a la carte option, they can choose that, or they can go for a 3-course meal or a full 10-course degustation. And I always bring it down to food, don't I?
Oh, I love that. I love that. Back to that cook or chef. I think that's a great way to sum that up. And your ideal client, sort of through who your ideal client is.
We can work with all kinds of clients, but our ideal clients are in the small to medium-sized businesses, and either they are technology companies or professional services. And the reason why is because we're very good at making thought leadership type of strategy. And so, it's about trying to get your product and knowledge out there. That's what we can do. And our strategy works very well with that.
Okay, fantastic. And if you look at some of the biggest mistakes, you talked about it earlier, and you're very open about the fact that you made lots of mistakes. What what are some of the biggest mistakes that you reflect back on with building this agency?
The biggest mistakes is probably relationships. It's very important. I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I didn't realize the importance of working in an industry where you've already got relationships. So with Curate Bee, I pretty much all the first round of clients were all from people who knew me, and they trust me to know that I will do a really good job for them. Where if I talk about the golf business, I played golf, but I didn't know anybody in golf, and I had no connections, no network, and it was really hard to try and build a business from that when there was just no relationship to start off with. So I would say that if anybody's looking to start a business, just know that you will be relying on your relationship, the initial friends and families and colleagues to support you through it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think the clearer you can define that ideal client who you really want to help, then I think it's easier for people to actually refer you.
Absolutely.
So I think
Yep.
that that works really well. And I'm sure, I know we've used your service. It's very good. And I'm sure other people here will be, it's a lot easier for them to refer you or basically put you in a position where they can refer you. Given that clarity. And what are some of the biggest challenges you face at the moment growing your agency?
Well, I think there's the same challenge for any businesses, and it's always about working capital. It's really important to try and set it up with the working capital so that you can grow your business. And what I mean by that is, a structure, however you do with the services and products, so that the business can be self-funded as much as possible. But with services businesses, certainly less options. But with product businesses, if I could say one word out there, is just, look at all kinds of financing options to help you grow. And because, like I said, with my accountant days, I do understand this space. It's very important to know your numbers and use those numbers to talk to the right people to give you the right working capital, because it could either make or break your business.
Yeah, no, look, that's excellent advice. So the last question in the build section is around your partner, Barry, or your husband, Barry. Yep. So if he's listening to this podcast today or in the future when it's released, what would you like to say to him about him supporting you through this journey?
Oh, he's just been absolutely fantastic support, and it makes such a difference when you have somebody to bounce ideas with. I'm very lucky that my husband, we're like equal partnership in a marriage, that we share the workload at home and with our daughter, as well as we confide in each other with what our successes and our failures. He himself is also a business owner, so which makes it easy, I guess, for us to share with each other. But I think it's quite easy to feel ashamed when there's down moments. And I think what I really got out of Barry is that I can tell him anything and ask him anything, and there's no judgment, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's such a powerful trait. So the next section we're going to move on to is the live section. So why don't you just take us through a typical week for you?
It's very important, I've learned from the past, to try and balance everything and not be too much of a workaholic. So I've structured my week now that I try not to have meetings on Mondays and Fridays, and have meetings in blocks on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. Mondays is very much preparing for the week, and Friday I leave that for some admin stuff or anything that I need to work internally on the business. And then the middle of the week is very much focused on the business. And that sort of structure gives me the flexibility of how to work around it, but also gives me the full structure to focus on the important elements so that I don't miss anything.
Excellent. Great. And look, to be honest, that's something that I've done this year. Mondays, Fridays, no external meetings. And it's fantastic. I think that's a great thing. It certainly worked for me. Brilliant. So the next section is around the give section. So what's a cause or a community that you're really passionate about that you would love others to think about in their day and potentially support?
I think it's important. It's so good that you asked this question, Paul, because everything that we do, we must look at it from a community level of how we contribute to the community, and not just for ourselves. And so I have been advocating and volunteering for a number of causes, but my main cause is really advocating for women, and particularly considering I notice the challenges that I have faced working with financial institution as a women business owner. I am working with a software provider to roll out a peer-to-peer lending platform just for women in business. And that has now extended to a number of things, but ultimately it's about financial inclusion for women in business. And so watch this space. I've created a social enterprise called Her Network, and that's very much is focused on that. And it's not just about women, it's about men and women working together to champion women in business.
Brilliant, great. And we'll have the link to the show notes. That and others that you mentioned, we'll definitely have those links in the show notes. So that's fantastic. And I know you haven't mentioned it, but I know that you do a lot of good for your daughter and other people that are like your daughter. And I think you're a real inspiration to have that, which a lot of people don't have that in their lives. You've got that plus everything else you do. So, I think you're amazing in how you balance that.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it. I know I didn't talk about my daughter, and I'm happy to talk about her. So maybe we could do a second show and add that element to it.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. So the last is the action section. So this is where people can get some great action, learning from all of the mistakes you've made, but also, the great progress you've made. So the first is around personal productivity tips. So what's a number one personal productivity tip you'd love to give the BLG listeners?
I use a project management system called RIGE, which we rolled out in the company. But I found by using it as part of my to-do list, so that I'm not using a separate system, it kind of helps me really be really efficient, looking at what are the tasks I need to do for work as well as for my personal stuff, and not dealing with numerous lists at the same time. So I have found that I've been so much more productive doing that, and using one system for both work and my personal stuff. And Rike works with, it's a really good system. So I'm really enjoying that.
Brilliant, and we'll definitely have the links in the show notes. Around other apps that you use. So firstly, on your phone, what are some apps on your home screen that you love to use?
I actually like using Slack. And that's one app that works not just on the phone, but obviously on all of the devices. And very big, before it was Skype, then Hangout, but I found Slack seems to really also makes the productivity of team communication so much better as well. And I can't live without it. I'm always looking at it and the different topics, what's going on.
Excellent. And anything on your, other than Rike and Slack, is there any other key platform that you use?
I also use Evernote. I find Evernote it's a notepad, but it also syncs. I think syncing with all devices makes it easy for me to keep track rather than having the bits and pieces of paper. But I liked when you can also scan business cards. It makes it very easy, and I can just shoot that off to others. And there are lots of good apps with that way. But Evernote seems to give me, when I want to jot down some notes or share it with somebody, makes it very easy to do. And we used to have our meeting notes with that, but it doesn't need to be used for that. But for Evernote on the phone, it seems to be there when it needs to capture my brilliant ideas at the moment at that time.
Fantastic. And I think it's great too that it can actually search written notes as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool feature. So the next is podcasts and books. What are some, firstly, podcasts? What are some podcasts that you love to listen to?
Well, aside from your podcast, Paul,
Thank you.
I like listening to Tony Robbins. I know that he may not be everybody's cup of tea, but the latest series with Tony Robbins seems to hit the nail with me, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's given me really good, I guess, strategic ideas for my business and for my personal life. So it's working for me at the moment, and I highly recommend that.
Great, excellent. And book? Any book that's...
Yeah, I'm reading this amazing book called The Tools of the Titans by Tim Ferriss.
Yes.
Yep, and it's like a Bible with lots and lots of content and information. And I've only just started, but I've already picked up some few ideas that can help me. And it is a smorgasbord of lots of tips from lots of high achievers.
Brilliant, great. So once again, that'll be in the show notes. And the next question is around advice. So you've had a wonderful journey. You've experienced early on some with your father not being as successful as he would like, through to corporate, then jumping into your own business and being very successful. So lots of experience. Given all of that, what advice would you love to give the BLG audience around them growing their business?
I would love to say it's okay to fail. So I did share my story about my father, and he, since 20 years ago, set up a new business, and now he's a successful multi-millionaire enjoying a very cruisy retirement. So yes, the beginning was hard and it has impacted, but what I've also learned from him and watched him rebuilding his life later in years is that it's never too late. Do it when you're ready to do it, and just know that it's okay to fail and start again if you can. But I've learned from my dad, from his failing as well as his success.
Excellent, great, well said. And more about you. How can people find out more about you?
Yes, I would love to hear more about anybody that wants to talk to me, and I'm happy to talk to them about marketing and women entrepreneurship. But just come to my website, curatebee.com, and there's a contact page, and just find me from there. And also you can find me from LinkedIn on my website as well, our website.
Excellent, great. So the links to that, to Sandra's website and other links that she mentioned today, will be in the show notes. But I just wanted to thank you, Sandra, for coming in and telling your story today. It's very inspiring. You're very open, and I think that's the sort of person, how you are on this podcast is how you are to do business with. You're a wonderful human being, and wish you every success in the future.
Thank you, Paul. I really enjoyed talking to you on the podcast. It's like me and you having a conversation. So thank you for inviting me, and I would love to come back whenever you like me to.
Excellent. Can't wait for that. Thanks, Sandra. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.